I swear I wasn't trying to get involved in anybody's drama. All I wanted was a quiet place to live, someplace cheap enough that I could afford it on my part-time job and still have something left over for groceries. That's how I ended up sharing an apartment with my friend Josh, my new roommate who, honestly, seemed more excited about splitting rent than actually living with another human being. But things were fine, normal, predictable, until the night his older sister sent me a message that changed everything. It was late, the kind of late where the whole apartment feels half asleep. Rain tapping on the windows, one dim lamp in the living room. Me trying to finish a stack of homework I'd already ignored for too long. Josh had gone out earlier, muttering something about meeting friends. I didn't think much of it. I figured I'd have the place to myself until morning. That's when my phone buzzed. At first I thought it was Josh asking me to grab something from the fridge or telling me he'd be home late. But when I looked down, my stomach did that weird little drop that only happens when your brain isn't sure if something is exciting or dangerous. It was from his sister, Emily. We weren't close. Barely acquaintances, really. She'd been around a few times, always polite but distant, like she was trying to decide what she thought of me. She moved quietly, talked softly, and had this habit of looking at you like she knew more than you wanted her to. Mysterious, unpredictable, but friendly enough. So why was she texting me now? Her message was short. No emojis. No explanation. Just, come upstairs, but don't knock. I stared at those words like they might rearrange themselves into something that made sense. Come upstairs? She wasn't even supposed to be here tonight. And why would she want me to come up to Josh's room, her old room, without knocking? Was something wrong? Was she hurt? Did she need help? Or was this some kind of weird prank? My first thought was that something bad happened to Josh. Maybe she'd come by and found something wrong. Maybe she didn't want to scare me through text. My mind jumped to every worst-case scenario at once. But then another thought slipped in, quieter, but heavier. What if this wasn't about Josh at all? The rain got louder. The apartment felt smaller. I could feel my heartbeat in the tips of my fingers as I typed back, asking if everything was okay. But before I could even press send, another message popped up. Just come. Please. That word, please, hit me harder than the rest. Emily didn't sound like someone playing a joke. She sounded urgent. Maybe scared. Maybe hiding something. And the fact that she was upstairs, alone, in the dark, in a room she hadn't lived in for years, it didn't make any sense. I stood up slowly, every instinct arguing with itself. Part of me wanted to ignore it, pretend I never saw it. But another part, the louder part, kept telling me that if I didn't go, I might regret it. So I started toward the stairs, trying to breathe normally, trying to convince myself that everything was fine. But the moment I reached the bottom step, I heard something, a sound from upstairs that made me freeze in place. And that's when I realized something was seriously wrong. I hadn't planned on getting tangled in the personal lives of this family, but looking back, the warning signs were probably there from the start. Little things I brushed off because I needed the room, and because Josh made everything sound so simple. Josh and I weren't best friends or anything. We'd gone to high school together, drifted apart, then bumped into each other again during a coffee shop rush where he recognized me before I recognized him. He was always upbeat, always talking like everything in life was just a minor inconvenience he'd eventually charm his way through. When he offered me his extra room, I thought I'd lucked out. Affordable rent, decent location, no drama. Or so I believed. Emily, his older sister, was the opposite of him in almost every way. Where he was loud, she was quiet. Where he was chaotic, she was controlled. She had this calm, observant presence, as if she could see layers in people the rest of US didn't notice. She didn't visit often, but when she did, she always moved around the apartment like she remembered exactly where everything used to be back when she lived there. Josh once mentioned she stayed with him for a while before moving out suddenly, but he never explained why, and I didn't want to pry. Their relationship felt strained, or maybe complicated. You could sense it in the silence between their jokes, in the way Josh avoided certain topics when she was around. And she always treated me with this strange mixture of politeness and curiosity, like she was studying me, deciding whether I was trustworthy. There was one moment weeks earlier that kept replaying in my head as I stood at the bottom of the stairs. Emily had come over to grab something from storage, an old box she said she'd forgotten. She seemed tense that day, pacing a little, breathing unevenly. At one point, when Josh left to run to the store, She looked at me and asked, almost too casually, "Do you ever hear anything weird upstairs?" I'd laughed it off, assuming she meant the usual apartment noises. But she didn't smile back. She just nodded slowly, like my answer confirmed something she wasn't sure she wanted confirmed. Then she left without the box. Now, weeks later, she was upstairs again, unannounced, alone, and texting me like something was urgent enough to hide from her own brother. The more I thought about it, the clearer it became that I didn't know either of them nearly as well as I thought I did. Josh had mentioned earlier that he'd be out late, but he hadn't said where he was going or who he was meeting. He'd been acting distracted for days, checking his phone a little too often, pacing the apartment at night. I assumed it was school stress or work drama, but maybe it was more than that. And then there was Emily, suddenly telling me to come upstairs without knocking, something she didn't have to say unless she was worried about noise, about being heard, about someone knowing she was there. My foot hovered above the first step as I replayed her messages in my head, especially that last word, please. Something had pushed her to come here tonight. Something had made her reach out to me instead of her own brother. And as I finally began to climb the stairs, one slow step at a time, I could feel that whatever was waiting for me at the top wasn't just about a text message. It was something deeper, something I wasn't ready for. And halfway up, I saw a shadow move under the door at the top of the hallway, one that definitely wasn't mine. My first instinct was to tell myself it was nothing, just a trick of the light, maybe headlights passing by the window. But the shadow didn't move like that. It shifted slowly, as if someone on the other side of the door was pacing or waiting. My pulse kicked up. I hesitated on the second-to-last stair, debating whether to call out her name. But something about her message, don't knock, kept my mouth shut. If she didn't want me knocking, she definitely didn't want me announcing myself. The hallway was dim, only lit by the faint glow of a street lamp filtering through the tiny upstairs window. It made everything feel thinner, like the walls were holding their breath. I could hear raindrops hitting the roof in uneven patterns, and somewhere beneath it all, a softer sound. A whisper? A footstep? I couldn't place it. When I reached the top, I paused again, letting my eyes adjust. Emily had asked me to come upstairs, but she hadn't told me where. Only Josh's old room door was pulled almost shut, just a thin line of darkness visible between the frame and the wood. I stepped closer, slow, careful. My mind spun through possibilities. Maybe Emily discovered something about Josh, about their past, something she didn't want to involve him in. Maybe she'd found that box she left behind, and inside it was something she didn't want to explain. Or maybe she was scared of someone, or something else entirely. I tried to breathe quietly, but every inhale felt loud enough to give me away. I was close now, inches from the door, close enough to see that the sliver of darkness wasn't just dark, it was shifting. Like someone inside was blocking the light 1 second and not the next. I whispered, barely audible, "Emily?" Silence. Then, after a beat too long to be normal, a voice, hers, but lower than usual, murmured, "Come in," but slowly. There was something off about the way she said it. Not the words themselves, but the tension bury underneath them. Like she was trying to sound calm, but wasn't. I pushed the door gently with 2 fingers. It opened only an inch before stopping, as if something on the other side was pressed against it. My breath caught, because right then, before I could push harder, something tapped against the door. Soft, deliberate, too close to be an accident. And when I glanced down, I saw it. Just barely. Something small poking out from the gap near the floor. A folded piece of paper, shoved toward me from inside the room. My hand hovered over the folded paper like it might burn me if I touched it. For a second, I just stared, waiting for it to move again, waiting for any clue about what was happening on the other side of the door. Emily hadn't said another word. The room felt too silent, like the air had thickened and wrapped itself around the hallway. Finally, I crouched and picked it up. The paper was damp at the edges, maybe from her hands, maybe from something else. My fingers trembled as I flipped it open. Only 5 words were written inside, rushed and uneven. "Don't trust what you hear." My chest tightened. I looked up at the door, at the thin shadow line under it. Suddenly, every tiny sound in that room felt like it had a secret meaning. The pacing, the whisper, the tap. Had she been trying to talk to me at all, or keep me quiet? "Emily," I whispered again, this time barely pushing any breath behind her name. Nothing. Then, A creak. Not from the door, but from deeper inside the room. Slow. Heavy. Like weight shifting. Not hers. Couldn't be. It didn't match her voice, her footsteps, anything about her. Something else was in there. Or someone. I stepped back instinctively, but before I could get far, the door nudged open an inch more, scraping softly against the floorboards. Not because I'd pushed it, because something inside pushed back. My lungs locked up. I wanted to run. Everything in my body screamed to get downstairs, out the door, anywhere but here. But I kept thinking about Emily's message, the urgency in that please. If she was in there, if she needed help, I couldn't leave. Even if something inside that room felt wrong in a way I couldn't name, I swallowed hard and leaned forward just a little, trying to look through the narrow opening. The room beyond was dark. Too dark. Like someone had blocked off the window or turned off every light on purpose. The smell was different too, dustier, older, like the room hadn't been opened in months. But that wasn't right. Josh went in there all the time. He used it for storage. He kept clothes in there. It should have smelled normal. My phone buzzed in my pocket, so sudden it nearly made me fall backward. I grabbed it with shaking hands. Another message from Emily. Don't come in. Hide. My heart slammed against my ribs so hard it hurt. Hide. From what? Was she in danger? Was she warning me? I typed back instantly. Asterisk, where are you? Asterisk, before I could hit send, another message appeared. It's not me in the room. A chill crawled down my spine, slow and cold. I stared at the half-open door, at the darkness breathing on the other side of it. If Emily wasn't the one who tapped, if she wasn't the one who whispered, if she wasn't the one who pushed the note, then who had been standing inches from me? And just as that thought formed, before I could step away, before I could even blink, the shadow inside the room shifted again. Closer, right up against the door. Before I could even process how close the shadow was, my phone buzzed again. But this time, not with a text. It was a call. From Josh. My stomach lurched. He never called. Always texted. Always quick. Always casual. But his name flashing on my screen now felt wrong. Especially since he was supposed to be out with friends, nowhere near the apartment. I answered with a whisper. Josh? Where are you? All I heard at first was breathing, shaky, uneven, nothing like his usual careless tone. Then his voice came through, raw and terrified. Don't go upstairs. I'm almost home. Just get out of the apartment. Now. My blood ran cold. Josh, what's happening? Emily texted me. She told me to come up. Silence. Then, more urgent. Emily's with me. She's been with me all night. She didn't text you. The hallway spun. My grip tightened on the phone, eyes darting to the barely open door, where the shadow still hovered. Too still to be human, too close to be harmless. But someone's in your room, I whispered. Josh's breath caught. I heard him break into a run. Don't speak to it, he said. And whatever you do, don't let it know you've figured it out. Before I could respond, the door in front of me creaked open. Not by an inch this time, by a full, silent foot. The door eased open just enough for the darkness inside to feel alive. Not moving, not breathing, just watching. Every instinct in my body screamed to run, but my feet stayed planted, like the floor itself had grabbed hold of me. Don't let it know, Josh had said. Too late. I felt it. Whatever was in that room already knew I was there. Then, from behind me, my phone buzzed again. A text from Josh this time. I'm 2 minutes away. Keep it in the room. Keep it in the room. Like I had any control over that. The air shifted. Something inside the darkness stepped forward, and for the first time, I heard it clearly. Not footsteps, something lighter. A dragging sound, like fabric brushing the floorboards. And then, faintly, quietly, it spoke. My name. Not Emily's voice. Not Josh's voice. But an imitation of one. Like someone had heard Emily once and tried to copy the pitch, the rhythm, the softness, but couldn't get the emotion right. I forced myself not to move. Not to breathe. It whispered my name again, more confident this time, as if proud it had gotten closer to sounding human. My phone buzzed once more. Another text from Josh. Don't answer it. It only learns when you respond. My heart hammered so hard I thought it might be loud enough for the thing to mimic too. Every fiber of me wanted to back away, but the moment I shifted my weight, the shape inside the doorway shifted too, matching me, mirroring me. It didn't want me to leave. Then, finally, the sound of keys at the front door downstairs. A frantic clatter. Josh. The thing inside the room froze. Heavy footsteps thundered up the stairs. Josh appeared beside me, panting, eyes wide with something between fear and regret. Move, he whispered. Before I could react, he slammed the door shut so hard dust fell from the frame. Then he dragged a dresser, his old dresser, from the hallway and pressed it against the door as the thing inside suddenly slammed back. Once, twice, 3 times. Each hit shook the floorboards. Josh grabbed my arm and pulled me toward the stairs. We don't have long. It only gets stronger when it copies. Copies what? I asked, breathless. He didn't answer. Not directly. Instead, he looked at me with this guilty, exhausted expression and said, "That room, it learned my voice first." Before I could respond, a new sound leaked from behind the sealed door, my own voice. Calling his name. For a moment, hearing my own voice echoing from behind that door felt like being pulled out of my own skin. It wasn't just copying the sound, it was copying the fear. My fear. Every tremble, every shaky breath, every cracked syllable. Like it wanted to prove it already knew me better than I knew myself. Josh didn't give me time to freeze. He tugged my arm harder. Come on, we have to leave while it's still confused. But I wasn't confused. I was terrified, and angry, and desperate for answers. We barreled down the stairs, nearly tripping over each other. The banging upstairs grew louder, less human with each hit, like something was smashing itself against the walls just to test them. The moment we reached the bottom floor, Josh slammed the front door shut behind us, rain hitting our clothes instantly as we ran into the parking lot. We didn't stop until the apartment was a distant, dark rectangle behind us. Only then did I finally turn to him. "Josh," I said, breath ripping out of my chest. "What was that thing? And why was it in your room?" He ran a shaky hand through his drenched hair, looking years older than he had that morning. "It started with Emily," he said quietly. "Not because she did anything wrong, just because she lived in that room first." My pulse steadied, but my breath didn't. "She told me once," he continued, "that she felt watched. Not like ghosts and stuff watched. More like something was trying to understand her. She said she heard breathing that wasn't hers. Echoes that didn't belong. Words she never said out loud." He swallowed hard. I didn't believe her. I told her she was stressed. She moved out to get space. But I should have listened. "So it copies people?" I asked. "Not just copies," he said. "It studies. It learns. It tries to get better at being human. Every time someone responds to it or talks near it, it picks up more. That's why Emily asked you before if you heard anything weird. She wanted to know if it had started again." The rain softened to a drizzle, but I felt colder than before. "And the texts?" I asked. "Those weren't from her," he said. "It must have learned her tone. Or just used her name because it knew you'd come." I shivered, remembering the pleading "please" at the end of that message. "Then why didn't it follow us out?" I whispered. Josh looked back toward the apartment. "It doesn't leave the room. It can't. But it can reach through doors, windows, phones, maybe. I don't know how far it goes, but it wants attention. It wants to be noticed. It's been growing for years." We stood in silence, the rain becoming a soft hiss around us. "So what now?" I finally asked. He sighed, the weight of everything settling into his shoulders. "I'm moving out. And you're not going back inside. I'll get your stuff another day. During the day. With help." I nodded. It didn't even feel like my life anymore. Just some nightmare we'd narrowly escaped. But as we walked toward his car, drenched and exhausted, something in my pocket buzzed. My phone. I froze before pulling it out. The screen was cracked, probably from running, but the new notification pushed through anyway. A message. From me. Just one line. "It's okay. You can come back now." Josh saw my face pale and immediately shook his head. "Don't open it." I deleted the message without reading the rest. And as we drove away, putting miles between us and that dark, silent room, one thought kept circling in my head. A thing doesn't try that hard to sound human, unless it plans to use that voice again. Somewhere far behind us, in that small, shuttered room, it was still learning.